Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the Couch GMs podcast. It is Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023. I'm your host, George Kerth, here with Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap. Tyler, at least you can match me. Rocking the Phillies tonight, World Baseball Classic, obviously right before we're recording, but they'll have won by the time you guys are listening. So, but how you guys doing?
Maybe. The game might still be going on. Baseball takes forever.
Yeah, but that'd be like 25 innings in probably at that point. I'd be impressed.
Hey, I'm just saying.
Look, I'm not going to support just out here crapping on baseball. I mean, we are a football podcast. I hear that. But a lot of people that listen to this podcast are multi-sport fans. A lot of people in here play some fantasy baseball, some fantasy basketball. Maybe there's some people out there that are die hard for March Madness right now. Who knows? But whatever it is that you get into, I'm just glad that you're rooting on some sports. I'm not going to allow the crapping on baseball right now.
Go sports.
That's what you deserve, Cody. Your entire
sports.
background going out.
Yeah, you just completely got dark.
Hey, we're rolling with it. Couch GMs kind of live.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. So if you guys did not hear our return show 2 weeks ago, make sure you go check out the beginning of it. We are changing our format a little bit here. Biggest reminder, we're going to be back every other Wednesday during the off season, and you might hear some bonus episodes sprinkled in. So make sure you check us out on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Turn on those notifications so you can see whenever we post a new episode or new content. And you can always follow us on social media to see more and join our Discord chat. The link will be in the description of the podcast or video. All right, boys, why don't we just sit back, relax, and chat? So since we last talked, a lot of free agents signed, but there's a couple other things that I think we should talk about first. Biggest thing is actually the NFL draft and the Panthers moving up to pick 1 and getting a haul back in the Bears getting a haul back. They got pick 9, a second round pick, another first and second, and DJ Moore. I'll start us off by saying I hate the fact that DJ Moore is a Bear. Cody probably does for different reasons. I am very concerned about him being productive in an offense led by Justin Fields. They're going to be run first still. I'm not convinced in Justin Fields' arm, even though I know he is a very talented, high-ceiling quarterback. I think that it's good to put a weapon around him. It's smart of the Bears, but I don't know if it's going to work out.
I don't think he's going to be much worse from the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers really
the
were
end
not
Panthers,
that,
right? Not like his peak time.
Yeah, not peak. I mean, as of what we've seen recently, like I think he's going to be about the same. He's still going to make some plays because he is talented enough. I mean, really, what did Justin Fields have to throw to? I'm being fully honest. Like, yeah, we're talking he's a run-first quarterback. He really didn't do much with his arm, but what did he have to throw to?
Your boy Darnell Mooney. My boy Cole Kmet.
Darnell Mooney should not be a number 1 receiver.
Chase Claypool stinks, but...
Yeah, Claypool...
Hey, Bears fans are trying to tell me that they have the best trio in football now with Mooney, Moore, and Claypool, so...
I could probably name you at least 7 or 8 better ones, so...
Yeah, Claypool's mid. Darnell Mooney, I like him a lot, but he is not a number 1 receiver. He should not be. And, Cole Kmet is, again, mid on tight ends. He's nothing special. So he really didn't have much to throw to. So DJ Moore stepping in there, I think it's less about what it's going to do for DJ Moore and more about what it's going to do for Darnell Mooney. I think having... Claypool to take some eyes off of him, having DJ Moore to take some eyes off him. Mooney might be the forgotten child. Now on the Bears, he might get some softer coverage, and all that dude needs is man-to-man, and he can burn him over the top, and he can be gone. So I think that Darnell Mooney's stock goes up by this trade. DJ Moore, I think, stays pretty even. Claypool, I think, goes down.
Claypool was already down, but does it concern you that DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney are similar style wide receivers? They're both kind of get space, get the ball, make a man miss, go to the end zone. Like that, is that concerning at all?
No, I think they're similar, but I don't think they're the same. Like I think Darnell Mooney is more of the break it loose kind of guy. DJ Moore is more of my reliable, like, look, if it's third and mid and I need to throw it to somebody, I'm not looking at Darnell Mooney. I'm looking at DJ Moore. I think he's a more reliable guy. So I don't think it hurts them at all. And honestly, like we've seen teams in the past have very similar guys. I mean, look at the Dolphins just last year. We had Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the same team. You had speed receiver with a speed receiver, and all it did was work. It looked great. So I think there shouldn't be any issues with having two similar receivers.
I would say back to George's point, though. You mentioned you don't like it because of Justin Fields. As an Eagles fan who literally saw 2 years of Jalen Hurts finally break out in year 3 when he got a top wide receiver, A. Brown. If you compare it, I mean, there is some comparison that I'm not saying Justin Fields is going to be the next Jalen Hurts. Not saying that at all. Don't really want that to happen, but there is definitely some similarities, and it is, as a Packers fan, but if you're a Bears fan, nice to see a franchise that seems to finally be going in the right direction after quite a few down years.
Is your mug okay, Tyler? Did you break it there?
Yeah, I smacked mugs. These things are going to pick up.
Did you say you smacked
pugs?
pugs?
A lot more weird. I smacked mugs. I have 2 mugs here. I'm sorry.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I wanted to get all the dog people out after us. Mugs with an M, not a P.
No, but honestly, like the Bears are one of my most impressive offseason teams. I think that they're doing the most in free agency. So they went and they traded for DJ Moore. They got a buttload of picks along with it, including they still have a good first round pick on top of tons of other first round picks. They get a top receiver in DJ Moore. They get a great linebacker in Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. They get a solid guard in Nate Davis. DeMarcus Walker is an up and comer. He showed a lot of speed coming off the edge. You got Travis Homer and Dante Foreman both signed in there. So you got some more running back depth since they did lose David Montgomery. Robert Tunyon stepping in at tight end, who I think is an upgrade over Cole Kmet. Andrew Billings, PJ Walker as a backup quarterback. Like they're making moves. They're making a lot of moves, and I really like the moves that they are making. I think their team is going in the right direction. The Vikings, we saw that they started really hot last year, and they kind of imploded. And I'm not seeing the Vikings do enough that I'm like, oh yeah, they're figuring it out. The Packers, I feel like, are going right into rebuild mode. And the Lions are making a lot of impressive moves as well. And I really like where they're going, but are they there yet? Probably not. So I think, like, as weird as it sounds,
Johnson, they're better than the Eagles last year. So
I think that the Bears and Lions could very well be battling it out for the top spot next year. Like, obviously, the Vikings are still going to be there. Obviously, the Vikings are probably still the favorites to win that division. But I don't think you can count the Bears or the Lions out in the direction that they're moving if Justin Fields can hit that year 3 stride that Cody was kind of alluding to.
I don't think the Vikings are the favorites. I think the Lions are the favorites to win the North because of how many pieces the Vikings have lost.
I'll pull up DraftKings, see where we're at.
Well, yeah. I think the Vikings are like the fancy name for people that don't follow as closely as we are. I think the Lions are the favorites, and I actually think the Vikings have a good chance to finish last in that division next year.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance the Vikings, because they've already talked about it. I don't want to digress too much into speculation. They've already talked about letting walk next offseason. So if they don't re-sign him, they let him walk. They've lost a lot of key people. Zadarius Smith is, talking about, he already posted, "Thank you, Vikings organization," despite not being cut. Like, that was one of their key off seasons. They're in a lot of cap trouble. They kind of like won last year and it didn't work out and at the end of the day, they weren't that good of a team. They won a lot of close games.
As of right now, according to DraftKings, Detroit Lions are the favorites for the division at plus 160. Vikings are second at plus 275. Bears close behind in third at plus 300, and Packers in last at plus 400.
Wow.
Makes sense to me. Jordan Love's going to prove everyone wrong, but we can talk about that. But before we move on, we talked a lot about the Bears side. Panthers move all the way up to number 1. That's for draft people. Now, there is some reports that they might be willing to trade back down depending on how many quarterbacks they like. Do you like the idea of them leaving it open to trade back down, maybe recoup some of those picks? Or do you think if you went up to number 1, you just have to take a guy?
No, Honestly, I don't hate it. I think it's a decent move. I mean, you move up to number 1, you lose a lot of picks, but maybe the trade package for the number 2 pick or number 3 pick was actually heavier. Like maybe they actually had to give up more. I mean, think about it. You're talking about first overall pick is most likely a quarterback. And we're talking to guys like Bryce Young, most likely number 1, but there's other quarterbacks that are rumored to go number 1. Who knows? It depends on what a team's favorite is. But maybe you have the Bears who might be willing to move on from the pick even more because they didn't necessarily need a quarterback, but the number 2 and 3 picks both do need quarterbacks. So maybe they were unwilling to move their picks, but now that the Panthers jump them, look, if you're the Texans sitting at number 2 and you're like, crap, we really wanted Bryce Young. We weren't afraid of it. We didn't think we'd lose him because the Bears don't want a quarterback. But now that the Panthers are there, like, we either give up something and move up or we lose out on Bryce Young. And maybe the Panthers are sitting there like, we don't need Bryce Young. There's 3 good quarterbacks. We'll take any of the 3. So they can be in that position where they can move down now. Maybe this is the best tactic for them, where they just wanted a top quarterback, but they didn't necessarily have a guy that's like, I need this guy. But if you can move down like a pick or 2 picks, still get one of the best quarterbacks in the draft, still get your franchise guy that you are totally cool with moving forward in, and you get something really good out of it to make up for all that you've given up, like it could be a genius move for the Panthers.
I'm with you, and I'm very interested to see. Like Bryce Young, I think should be QB1 in this draft, but the Panthers keep saying that they're going to go CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson. So I'm like, is this a punk to try to then get the Texans undrafted to be like, oh yeah, we're going to take, Bryce Young and then make them switch, even though they weren't planning on it? Or if we are the Panthers, do you try to trade back to 4 to the Colts and say, go ahead and you can take Bryce Young? If the Texans take Stroud, we'll take Richardson if they really don't care about the 2 or whatever. Or do you say to the Texans, we have a trade package to move back to 4 and they're going to take Young. If you really want them, take it. Here's your price tag. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes. I'm sure that if it's not already going on, draft night in those war rooms are going to be crazy if they really don't want Bryce Young because they're in the driver's seat to get him, who seems to be the favorite for all these teams, and they don't necessarily want him.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think Stroud's the best quarterback in the class anyway, so that's what I like with number 1. But I think the Texans are the move. They have to get the Texans to move up with them if they're going to trade back. Moving all the way back to 4 scares me too much, especially with Arizona at 3 not needing a quarterback. That opens up, the Raiders, maybe even Seattle, like to jump. Like the worst mistake would be to trade back to 4 and then get stuck with Will Levis because 3 quarterbacks went in front of you. And
That's true.
they
You don't
could
think the
sell.
Cardinals are just definitely saying we're staying to get the best non-quarterback in the draft?
What if it's I think, is it Seattle 5? What if they
It
jump
is Seattle 5.
What if they
That's
jump
true.
up to 3 to get a quarterback and then they still would get the best guy? Like draft day could be crazy because there's the 4 quarterbacks and all the tiers they rank them. Some people have Levis 1, some people have Levis 5, some people have Bryce Young 1, some people have Bryce Young 5. Like it's crazy, and I cannot wait to see how these quarterbacks fall. But we still got a lot of free agency news to talk about.
Yeah, you mentioned the Texans. We can jump onto them. They have made some signings, but most importantly, I think one of their biggest trades is they traded away their number 1 wide receiver, Brandon Cooks, to the Cowboys. And that's not the only move that the Cowboys made either. They also traded for Stephon Gilmore, which I think was one of the most shocking trades. Not because, like, I'm not shocked that he got traded, but I'm shocked that he got traded for so little. And then also on top of it, the Cowboys went ahead and cut Ezekiel Elliott, which if they don't go out and draft a running back or sign another big name running back, like this could finally be Tony Pollard's season. Could finally see Tony Pollard eat. And I'm excited for it.
Well, they signed Ronald Jones, but we know that doesn't mean too much anymore these days. He was not fantastic with the Chiefs when we thought he had a chance to steal the job. I'm really hoping that it's going to be Tony Pollard's offense, and Tony Pollard could be the biggest draft day jump in fantasy football this year. But I mean, I was pounding the table saying that Pollard was more productive than Zeke. Why is Zeke getting all these carries still last year? So it's nice to see that they were actually productive on that. And as much as I hate to say it, I love them trading for Cooks because once they got rid of the rest of their wide receiver room, like they really didn't have a great wide receiver too. They did lose a couple pieces. Like I believe Noah Brown went to Houston as well. So they needed extra help at
And
wide
Noah Brown
receiver.
had like a good game or two.
He did. And that's kind of all they were hoping for because, I mean, Gallup never really got going last year either. And they traded Amari Cooper. Like, they needed a wide receiver too if they want to try to make this push for a Super Bowl. So Cooks can definitely be that piece that they've been looking for.
No,
Yeah, I think it's great. Honestly, I think the Cowboys are looking really good right now. Gallup doesn't have to be a number 2 anymore. He gets to move down to 3. So a trio of Lamb, Cooks, and Gallup is a beautiful 3. Tony Pollard's more productive than Zeke, and you don't have that guy in front of you anymore. They still have an awesome offensive line. Dak, we've really seen him step up in these most recent years. He's honestly crazy to say it, but he's kind of underrated at this point. Like they were talking about him like he was a god, then all of a sudden they just kind of forgot about him because Jalen Hurts took off. But and the whole Cooper Rush era when Dak got injured, it kind of made people forget about Dak a little bit. But then on top of it, they keep one of their best guys in Leighton Vander Esch, one of their best linebackers, who I was kind of hoping he would come to the Titans. Not going to lie, he does have some injury risk, but the dude is just a baller. You got Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and then now you add Stephon Gilmore on top of it when you still have Trayvon Diggs on the other side. Like this Cowboys team is looking scary, and it's funny to me to sit back and look at this because like 2-3 years ago we were laughing at how bad that division was, how bad the NFC East was. We were like, every team sucks. It's basically who sucks the least on who makes the playoffs. But now you have the Eagles coming off a Super Bowl run. You got the Cowboys who are looking set up for a strong run this year. The Giants, you really can't count them out. They are trying to make some moves. They are getting some people really cheap as well. They did land Darren Waller. Anybody that did not hear that, that is a huge one. The Giants have been looking for a stud tight end for a while. Gives another weapon to Daniel Jones. Like, this division's looking good. I mean, the Commanders are still kind of
the Commanders
a joke, but like you can't have a stacked division like that all the time. So 3 solid teams. It's going to be a fun division this year.
And if anyone doesn't really get the hype of watching free agency, I think a lot of it has to do with the chess match that you see from teams that maybe you don't see unless you look deeper. But good example, the Eagles let CJ Gardner-Johnson go. He signed with the Lions, but they made it a priority to keep Darius Slay and James Bradbury. And then the Cowboys signed Cooks. Like, I think there's a lot of, we want to make sure we have our corners strong because we are going to be facing the Cowboys twice a year, maybe 3 times when you consider both those teams have a good chance to make a deep playoff run in an NFC that those could be the best 2 teams at this point. 49ers up there as well. Like, there's a chess match that always goes on that you have to kind of look behind the scenes and say, maybe this team made this move because this.
So the Gardner-Johnson move, I think, is fascinating. I did see a tweet come out about like what happened behind the scenes for that one. It was like the Eagles were planning on re-signing Gardner-Johnson and letting go of Slay. And then Gardner-Johnson's agent gave the wrong information to him about where the market was and how much he could actually get. So it got to the point where he started asking for more money and more money to the point where the Eagles are like, well, you know what? We can keep Slay cheaper than that. So they ended up keeping Slay, getting rid of Gardner-Johnson. He tested out free agency, immediately saw like the agent was wrong and the market is not there. And instead of getting this big extension he was supposed to have with the Eagles, instead he has to settle for a 1-year pretty cheap prove it deal with the Lions. Like, fire your agent today. Like that is a bad way to fall from grace, and he definitely got screwed over in that one.
So he was going to get 3 years, $8 million a year from the Eagles. He ended up having to sign with the Lions for 1 year, $8 million. So I guess there's the chance he could ball out and then get a long-term extension that's like
it wasn't
$10
high
million.
guarantees.
And yeah, so I mean, it wasn't exactly the
high.
greatest contract, but it was the fact that like they were right on the market. And then he was also like originally coming into the offseason saying he was willing to take slightly less to stay with a contender. He ended up with a contender anyway, if you consider Detroit on the rise like we do. But it wasn't as bad of a deal as it sounded because, like Tyler said, his agent tested the market off way wrong. And the only safety who got more money than him per year, if I'm not mistaken, was Jesse Bates.
And he got a massive deal.
Yeah.
Jordan Poyer, I can't remember his number off the top of my head, but he might have got a little bit more to go back to Buffalo too.
I'll check it out quick while you talk.
but
Oh, yeah, Short's
he's
got
a
it
key
then.
piece. He's a key piece in Buffalo. And then I don't want to like skip out on, you mentioned we were talking about the NFC East here, the trade that the Giants got for Waller, and to only give up a third pick. I know he had a down year, injury riddled, and all that too, but one from the Raiders organization, Raiders fans need to be upset with this one, not just because they lost one of their best players, but the Packers offered a second round pick twice for Darren Waller, and they said no, including as late as the trade deadline this past season when the Packers were trying to make their playoff push. And then at the beginning of free agency, you're like, actually, we'll give up a third round pick for Darren Waller. So definitely something interesting going on there. But I think it's a great move. It gives Daniel Jones a solid option. They still have, they brought the wide Slayton or Shepard, whichever S wide receiver it is for the Giants. I can't remember exactly which one. They still have Isaiah Hodgins, Darren Waller. They're putting some pieces around. I don't think they're ready to compete again with the Eagles and, definitely not the Cowboys. The Eagles, maybe they've lost so many pieces. That's just going to be an interesting offseason for them. But the Giants making moves on positions where a lot of teams tend to sit still.
So I'll fill in some blanks here quick. So Jordan Poyer got 2 years, $12.5 million. So that's what, 6.25 per year. So not as high because it was 1 year, 8 for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And for the Giants, they have Shepard and Slayton both still on the roster.
Oh, cool. So they got both wide receivers.
Poyer probably took a hometown discount as well. I mean, look, if
Mhm.
I'm playing for the Bills, and I would take a cheaper deal to stay with the Bills. I was talking to my fiance about this, and like some players, you go out there and they will say, no, I want the most money. I am putting my all into this. I want the most money I can get. Other players are like, look, I already make a lot of money. Like, I will take a discount to be able to stay with this team. And some players are like, you know what, I'll take a discount. We saw this from Tom Brady before, where he would take a discount just so that the team had more money to sign more players. And we hated it because we were like, oh, now this jerk just has this stacked team every year. But like, you got to respect it. Like, willing to take less money to win, that shows you care more about winning than money. Not that he wasn't making any money, he was still making plenty. But these kinds of interesting little nuances that go on in the NFL, I find fascinating. And, you can't dislike a player any one way or the other. If a player chooses the money over the winning, like, okay, winning's not guaranteed, but if you can get that guaranteed contract, that is. So you can't blame them. But if a player is willing to take a discount to stay with a team they love, or take a discount so that your team can be better and sign more players, like, you can't hate that either. You got to respect that. So it's definitely interesting to see the different ways that players go about this. I'm sure agents are always pushing for the more money. Like I did
'Cause they get
see,
cut.
obviously the Titans, they came out and they asked Kevin Byard, our Pro Bowl safety, to take a pay cut. He said no. It turned into a big hoopla where people were like, oh my God, they're going to cut him. They're going to trade him. He's going to want release. Like, it didn't amount to anything, and I didn't think it would. It's coming from really sketchy sources. They did ask him to take a pay cut. He said no. They said, all right, cool. Like, that's pretty much all it was. You can't harm them in asking. And I think that's something that people need to keep in mind is when you hear something like this come up, it's a business. Your team has, like, take the Titans, for example. They have $10 million in cap space. They also have about 30 holes they need to fill. Kevin Byard is making the second most money on the entire roster. Why not ask him to take a pay cut? And just because it got announced that he was asked to take a pay cut, how do you know everybody wasn't asked to take a pay cut? How do you know that every team isn't going around like, is anybody willing to take a little bit less? We really need a center. So if anybody's willing to take less, like, how do you know that's not happening? So don't freak out when you hear these kinds of things happening, when you see these restructures. As much as we say salary cap is a myth, it is not a myth. It is actually a thing. And, sometimes you have to work with your players to get those things to come through.
A lot of it, I think, has to do with age, too. Like, Jordan Poyer's in the situation where he's going to be 32 years old when this season starts. Like, he's already cashed in his big contract. He's coming to the end of his career. He knows Buffalo's a contender. He's going to take pay cut to stay there. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's 25. He was only on the Eagles for 1 year. Like, he did seem to have, a good relationship with the fan base, but he wasn't as bought in as, like, a Jordan Poyer is in Buffalo. And then, like, there's the same situation you're talking about with Tom Brady. Sometimes when players are in a town for so long, they just don't want to move at that point. Like, you saw the Eagles, as a good example, bring back Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, and Brandon Graham all on discounts for 1 year. They're all older players, but because
Kelsey's
they
the
wanted to
highest
stay
paid
in
center.
Philly.
Let's not call it a discount.
You're right. But Cox and Graham definitely came in below market value.
Yeah, I think I forget what team there was. Was it Cincinnati that I think offered Cox more? Wanted to stay in, and players do take discounts too, and players get asked for pay cuts all the time. But if they ask for a pay cut and they say no, you have to be ready to cut them or move on. Too, it sounds like the Titans and Bayern might be able to work it out, but there's still a lot of time left in the offseason for those moves to happen. So it's definitely a sketchy business, and players need to get as much money as they can when they can. Because at the end of the day, the teams, the organizations don't really care about them, and they look at them as dollar signs and how much profit they're going to make them. So I'm all for players getting as much money as possible. Don't have to take home discounts. A lot of times, and then also too, just the salary cap, it's real, and there's a difference between a pay cut, a restructure. It's all about how you manipulate and move the money around. 9 times out of 10, a restructure is not actually taking a pay cut. It's just pushing money out into the future.
And I just want to circle back a little bit. We've talked about a lot of trades. We talked about Stephon Gilmore getting traded, Darren Waller getting traded. There is a trade we didn't mention that definitely I feel needs mention because it's arguably the best corner in the NFL. And that is Jalen Ramsey got traded to the Dolphins for a 3rd-round pick. A lot of people were mad about this because they're like, our team could have given up a 3rd. Like, why wouldn't you do it? Contract was a big one. They did have to eat some decent contract for this one, but still, beautiful move by the Dolphins. I love them picking up Jalen Ramsey.
They fully
The
guaranteed his
Dolphins are
next
trying
2
to go
seasons.
in.
Like, they gave him a better contract. Like, that's why they guaranteed his next 2 seasons. The interesting thing is when they announced it as safety Jalen Ramsey. That was the interesting part to me.
Interesting.
I mean, because I was thinking, damn, Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, like a nice duo on the outside. But, Ramsey has really thrived in that slot corner hybrid safety role out in Los Angeles, and maybe him more as like the nickel corner star position, 3rd safety, and can continue to keep him in that role and move him around, which I think would probably be the best fit for him.
And that doesn't necessarily mean he's playing safety. That just could be the way that the contract was structured. I mean, we saw things as recently as Taysom Hill wanted to be signed as a quarterback, not as a tight end. I mean, he does technically play both, but tight ends make less. We saw the things in the past about Le'Veon Bell saying he wanted to be paid as a receiver and a running back, not just a running back, because he caught so many passes. Like, it all depends on, like, different positional groups do make more on average. So maybe, safety was better for the contract. I don't know, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's playing corner.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll let you know that they've updated their Twitter to change it to cornerback. So I think they just mistyped. So I went solid.
So
everybody
social media person wasn't quite locked in.
Or, maybe they're like, hey, don't give away our gameplay and put him back as a corner. Maybe nobody saw that. We'll wait and see. So, but he's definitely around. That's for sure. And he's older, has a big contract, but he's still one of the top players. He's probably not what he was when the Rams first traded for him. I mean, he can get beaten over the top these days, but he is still, top 5, top 10 corner in the league.
But he wouldn't be the first corner as he's aging to switch to playing safety, because then you have those ball hawking corners that can go, play eyes on the quarterback and just try to jump some routes, play contain. Like, it would not be a bad move for them to do that. I'm just not sure if that's exactly what the case is going to be.
And the Dolphins, they doubled down and they picked up Tua's 5th-year option. So you have the Dolphins going all in.
News on him.
We've heard, we got the Bills. We expect them to be contenders. The Patriots are probably the worst team in the league. And then the Jets, they're either going to be, depending if their quarterback is 39 or if they have a 3rd-year quarterback in Zach Wilson again, depending on how that trade falls out. So that could be another really good division that we're going to keep an eye on all season long.
Yeah, I was listening to an NFL radio show or something that said something beautiful about the Aaron Rodgers trade. And I think it finally got to what's been getting under my skin about it. They're not arguing that Aaron Rodgers is a great player. They're not arguing that the trade wouldn't make the Jets better. The thing he was arguing, and I agreed with, was we made such a huge deal. It became such a media spectacle for a trade that won't even make the Jets the best in their own division. Like, are we saying this trade makes them a Super Bowl contender? Because, like, are they better than the Bills? I don't think so. Um, are we guaranteeing that with Aaron Rodgers they're better than the Dolphins? Like, I can't even say that for sure. Um, so they might even be third best in their own division after getting Aaron Rodgers, and it's just crazy to see this much of a media hype over something that wouldn't even move the needle that much. Like, again, I get it. It's two-time MVP just recently. It's former Super Bowl winning quarterback. It is a big upgrade, but it's crazy that this trade really would not improve them enough to make them a true contender.
I completely disagree, and that's not surprising because I'm a Packers fan. But I think getting Aaron, like we look at that team last year. Yes, they didn't make the playoffs, but they just needed a competent quarterback. Like Mike White made them look good, who the Dolphins also signed, which I think is funny, to take that away from the Jets as their backup quarterback because he was able to do it. They have a lot of young pieces. Brees Hall coming off injury. They had the offensive rookie year, the defensive rookie year. They have a lot of young pieces gelling around him. They just need a competent quarterback, and they're going to get a quarterback. Yes, did not play great. I'm not even going to pretend that he did last year. He was probably a middle tier quarterback if you actually look at it. He now has a chip on his shoulder because the team he's been with 18 years is saying, hey, actually, we don't really want you anymore. Like we've seen numerous times, Aaron Rodgers with a chip on shoulder is a completely different player. And you brought up the Bills. They've lost a lot of pieces on defense. Their defensive coordinator left late in the season. They lost Tremaine Edmonds. Yes, they got Jordan Poyer back. They lost Isaiah McKenzie. Like they haven't done much add on. They need to beef up that offensive line. The Dolphins, same thing. They could be a lot of fun, but Tua's health is a big question mark. So I do think Aaron Rodgers to the Jets 100% makes them a contender, and they have an equally chance to win that division as any other team.
Yeah, but Aaron Rodgers with a chip on his shoulder is a much better quarterback. He absolutely was. But at what point do we accept the fact that he's 39? At what point do we accept the fact that he's not playing at the same level? Can you honestly tell me that watching the Packers last year, that Aaron Rodgers looked like the Aaron Rodgers of old? That Aaron Rodgers looked as good as he always has? Because I can't. I can tell you that just from watching that he did not look as good. And we said the same thing about Tom Brady. Like, yeah, but it's Tom Brady. Yeah, but it's Tom Brady. Like, and when push comes to shove, Tom Brady's going to be better. And we watched Tom Brady fall off a cliff. And we saw the same thing with Peyton Manning. He fell off a cliff. Like, Aaron Rodgers is at that age. Can we promise that Aaron Rodgers is going to run out here and that chip on his shoulder is going to be enough to make him the prime Aaron Rodgers of old? Because I can't guarantee that.
I know there's a lot of things that can happen when it comes to the playoffs. Like, you just kind of have to get hot at the right time. The New York Giants fans know that. They did it twice. But when are we going to, like, expand the microscope a little bit? When are we going to realize that the best team in that division is the third best team in the conference? Like, the Chiefs are better. The Bengals are better. And then there's a couple other teams around there that are still just as good. Bring Lamar back to the Ravens. They might be up there. The Chargers could be up there. If Russell Wilson becomes Russell Wilson again, the Broncos could be up there. Like, the AFC is so tough. If you would have told me that Aaron Rodgers was going to, this is a horrible example because it never happened, the Lions, because they are a long up and coming team similar to the Jets in an NFC that you could say, oh, there's two teams better than them in the whole conference. They're both in the same division. They're probably going to beat up on each other. There's a much better chance that he's going to have a chance at the Super Bowl run in the NFC than he does the AFC.
I think that's a valid point. Like, let's be honest. Who are the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFC right now?
Dak Prescott,
and why is
Jalen Hurts,
Jared Goff, Matt Stafford,
Jared Goff, Matt
healthy
Stafford,
Kyler Murray?
Kyler Murray.
Like, Kyler Murray's. Like, who else you got? You got Fields, Love, no, Smith. Like, anybody in the South? Derek Carr. Like, I agree. Like, if he would have went to San Francisco because Brock Purdy's having so many hit the shoulder and he's not gonna be ready for 6 months, like, okay, on that team, that's a lot of fun. Now, the Jets, I think a lot of fun pieces, and I'm not even saying it's a guarantee that he makes the playoffs. I'm not, but I do think, like, to your point, like, there's so many question marks. By getting Aaron Rodgers, he's in that automatically puts them in the tier with the Chargers, with the Bills, with the Dolphins. Like those teams that we think can be really good, but there's like one question mark. And to answer your question, you asked me, did I think Aaron Rodgers looked like peak performance? And the answer is absolutely no. But the Jets were good enough to win with Mike White in a tough division. They already beat the Bills. Heck, they beat the Bills with Zach Wilson last year. If you can get a top 12 quarterback out of him, top 12, that's all out of Aaron Rodgers. That's significantly better than what you're going to the season with at Zach Wilson. And they've gotten to the point where they've let every other free agent quarterback sign that it's like it's all or nothing on 12.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there on that point. I mean, I don't know. We have to see how the whole thing plays out. I just still stick with like it. The reason it gets under my skin is because I don't think the Jets become one of the best teams. So I don't see why we were hyping it up so much. Like you said, if they announced that Aaron Rodgers went to the 49ers, like, oh my God, the world would explode. That team is so good already.
If you announced that Aaron Rodgers went to Tampa Bay, you could say the same thing.
That'd be so annoying. Yeah.
It would be, but like their roster that's set up to win now.
Do you really think Tampa Bay, their roster right now, is that much better than the Jets?
No, but the conference is. The conference is much better.
The conference, it would put again, that would put Tampa Bay as the third best team in the conference, and two of those teams are in the same division. Like, you could say that there's a chance the Jets are still sixth best in the AFC with Aaron Rodgers, just because of all those fringe teams that I talked about that could explode at any point. And then the Bengals and Chiefs are clearly better, as opposed to the Eagles and Cowboys might be right there with the Buccaneers in that case.
Yeah, the Bucs are definitely worse than the Jets, but Aaron Rodgers on the Bucs makes them the best team in that division. It makes them in the playoffs. Like, look at the Eagles last year. The Eagles were really good last year. Don't get me wrong. I know they were a good team, but they also played nobody. I argued that so much, and they were able to have a cakewalk to the Super Bowl. They only had to win one real game to win a Super Bowl. Like, that's crazy. Like, it would have been two if the 49ers stayed healthy, but they got down to quarterback with no shoulder at some one point, so that doesn't count. But like, who's to say if Aaron Rodgers went to an NFC team that it wouldn't be the same? And you need a team that's better than what the Packers were last year, because obviously Aaron Rodgers didn't lead the Packers to a Super Bowl last year. But I feel like the Packers are in a desperate need for rebuilding. And there is a few teams that I feel like with a decent quarterback would be able to make a run like that. Even if you announce, like, in that division, it's difficult, but if you announce that the Giants didn't re-sign Daniel Jones and instead they got Aaron Rodgers, even that would get me like, oh, you know what? This might be fun. They do that, and then they go out and trade for a guy like D-Hop, and boom, you're like, we are talking about the Giants. We are hyping up the Giants. Like, he can make big splashes there. It's just the division is tough with the Jets. Going against the Bills, going against the Dolphins, and then that conference, like if they're able to make the playoffs in that division, it is one really difficult test after the other in the playoffs to even make to the Super Bowl. So it's hard for me to imagine the Jets in the Super Bowl right now.
Yeah, man. Like, you could argue that the big reason why the Chiefs got to the Super Bowl and even won last year is because they got lucky enough in seeding to not have to play both the Bengals and the Bills. Like, if they would have had to play both, good chance they wouldn't have gotten through. Like, the Ravens tested the Bengals, and then that's like there's like a whole thing. Like, they got the cakewalk schedule out of everything because they got lucky enough to get that one seed. As you know, controversial as that whole thing might have been, like, there's a gauntlet. You'd have to basically get lucky as the Jets. There's a good chance you might have to go in as a wild card, which means you're playing away playoff games. Like, I'm not saying he can't do it. There's a chance that he can make a run with the Jets, but young team could still be inconsistent as much as I like a lot of those players, and it is a gauntlet.
So I will try to move us on here so we don't talk about Aaron Rodgers all night. So let's
be honest. We're probably going to do a bonus episode when this trade finally goes through, just to me to say thank you and for you all to be like, thank God that guy left that team so Cody will shut up. So stay tuned for that.
Cody still will not shut up, but that is okay. I will still be throwing my heat the other direction because Cody and I, if we're good at anything, it's playing devil's advocate just to get it on under the other guy's skin. It's what we do best. But
for sure.
So let's go back to free agency. We are not at the draft yet. It seemed like a lackluster free agency because the names were not that big, but some moves were made. So let's go ahead and just get what are your favorite moves of free agency and what are your least favorite moves?
I want to start off with a question to Tyler because I remember last episode you had the quote of Derek Carr to the Saints, and you were like, "That's it. Look at that, Colts. That's how you band-aid a position." And then you saw the contract and said no. Baker to Tampa Bay makes me think, "Look at that, Colts. That's how you band-aid a position." Do you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I
Hang
love the
on.
signing. Like,
Did you all see? I'll let you finish, but did you all see NFL ticker? I think it was NFL, might have been ESPN, had across the bottom when after the signing, it was like, how is Baker an upgrade over Brady? Like that's what they were talking about. And I was
No.
like, guys, I get we're in free agency and you got to talk about something. But okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. I can shut up. Tyler,
That's
back to you.
no, I mean, look, Baker is a former first round pick. Um, he stepped onto a really crappy Rams roster last year and actually looked really good. So like if the Bucks are not in a position to really go draft one of the top quarterbacks, which they're not, they don't really have the capital to go trading up for one because it would cost way too much from where they're at. If they don't have an opportunity to sign a really big ticket free agent quarterback, which once it was announced that Lamar was not hitting free agency unless you trade 2 first round picks, there really wasn't a big ticket guy. That and on top of it, they have no money. The Bucks are really strapped for cash. They went all in to try to give Brady a couple more Super Bowls before he retired, and now their team is suffering. So why not like go get a guy like Baker who showed some flashes in the past that you know has the ability to do it if he has the right coaching, if he can really hit his stride. And on top of it, Baker's only 27. Like he's still young. Like if Baker goes out and hits, like you can re-sign him next year and you can get a 3-4 year deal out of him. He'd still play in his prime. Like it's a great deal. And if he doesn't work out, it's a 1 year deal. Get rid of him. And then next year you can go get your guy. I think it's a beautiful deal. And contract wise, like the dude signed for almost an identical contract to Jacoby Brissett. And say what
He's
you
going to be
will,
a backup.
I don't think Brissett is that spectacular. He's an okay backup. He shouldn't be a starter. I think Baker is better than Brissett. I don't even think this should be an argument, but I guess you could have that argument. But I think Baker is way above Brissett, and you get him for almost the same contract. Brissett's 30 and a worse player, and you got the same contract. Like, I think it was a beautiful move. It gives them a viable quarterback that they can still try to win games, even without having any cap space at all. And then, like I said, you get a 1 year trial out of him, and if it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul.
Baker
So you're assuming he's the starter.
won.
I am
Yeah,
assuming he's
I'm
a starter,
assuming.
yes.
I get it. Like Kyle Trask could be a guy they try to like work up, but
See, I see it as
still
a true
don't see.
competition.
I mean, I
I'm
can
not
see it as
saying
true competition, sure, but I don't see how Baker doesn't win that competition. Like Kyle Trask was never somebody who was blown off the page of like this is a future starting quarterback. It was they had the 32nd pick in the first round. They didn't have any holes after their Super Bowl. Let's go take a stab at Brady's replacement. And I haven't heard anything blowing me off the page that says that he could be the guy. They could try him, but I think if Baker wins the job and he goes on a good solid start to the year, which he could in a weak NFC, like we've said, as being if he plays like he did on the Rams the second half of last year, he's won playoff teams with worse rosters. He was won playoff games with the Browns with no wide receivers. Like there's a chance he could make the playoffs and even win a playoff game on Tampa Bay. And call me crazy, make that a hot take, whatever.
I mean, hot take. I guess I'm just the lowest on Baker, which doesn't surprise me. Still like him. I think Rams should do everything they could to re-sign him because of Stafford's injury concerns with his neck/throwing arm. Like,
Yeah.
and he looked good in that offense, but he didn't, and he went to a chance where I guess the only thing is with the Rams, it's Stafford unless you can't play. And Tampa Bay, he at least gets a shot to win out the job. So that is definitely worth it. So you brought up that signing. I would probably say my favorite signing is the Chauncey Gardner signing, but we talked enough about that. So I'm going to throw a different one out there. And it's not a huge signing, But I do think it could be impactful for fantasy football depending on how the rest of this offseason plays out. And that is everyone's favorite interview, Jamal Williams to the New Orleans Saints, pairs up with Derek Carr, and not so much, it kind of doesn't help Alvin Kamara's fantasy stock, but there is still a case from not this year but last year's playoff or Pro Bowl involving Alvin Kamara, where we're uncertain if how that's going to be resolved, and they expect it to be resolved before the season. Hence, he might miss and whatnot. So we saw it last year. He's a touchdown machine. Going to the Saints, weak division, might have RB1 opportunities. Definitely an underrated signing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I made a small list of my top signings, and Jamal Williams was on there. There's a few running back signings I liked out there. Like, I honestly like the deal for Miles Sanders. Give that dude a shot. I feel like he deserves a second chance. He had some fumbling issues, but he is a super talented back that never really got the kind of carries that he should have gotten in Philadelphia. But I have two. So I have two that I'm going to throw out there. One to get away from running backs, and then I'll come back to running backs. But to get away from running backs, Bobby Okereke, signing with the Giants. I love the deal. The dude's only 26. He is one of the better linebackers in the entire league. He gets a 4-year deal. Like, you now have the captain of your defense. Like, this dude was solid in Indy. Making so many clutch plays, and I think that the Giants just got a real sneaky good pick under the radar. And my other one, and like I still can't believe this guy's getting paid nothing, but Dante Foreman, like the dude looked so good in relief in Tennessee, and then he goes to the Panthers and looks super good once Christian McCaffrey gets traded. Like, the guy has done nothing but perform, and he is a guy that you can rely on as a number one running back. And the Bears signed him. They did just lose David Montgomery. Now they do have Travis Homer. They have Khalil Herbert. Those guys could obviously fight for some playing time. They could draft a running back, but there's also a good chance that Devontae Foreman finishes the season as their number one running back. Like, that's not out of the question at all. And even though he's proven himself 2 years in a row and he could be a number one running back, they signed him for only $3 million. That's chump change in the NFL. That's nothing. So to be able to go out there and get a solid running back like that for dirt cheap, I love the move.
You guys really got me in on the Dante Foreman train the last few years, and especially seeing how he performed on the Titans and on the Panthers. But I am not getting my hopes up because I am 100% sure that Khalil Herbert's going to get the first shot at that job. And we know Khalil Herbert's good. I think the question's going to be, can he stay on the field? And if he doesn't, I'm adding Dante Foreman in all my fantasy leagues right away. But I'm not getting my hopes up because I don't know for sure if he's going to get the target, like the carries he deserves.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I'm going to throw out two more honorable mentions. One, George, plug your ears, but it's Hargrave to the 49ers, adding him to that defensive line. I mean, the rich the rich get richer on that move. And then out of nowhere, the Cincinnati Bengals pulling in Orlando Brown to go on the left side to replace Jonah Williams, who is a solid left tackle, but he has his up and downs. After pulling in the best right tackle in L. Collins last year, getting Orlando Brown, getting solid bookends. This team saw how they lost the Super Bowl is because they couldn't protect Joe Burrow. They almost made it back there this year. We expect it to be Chiefs and Bills, or sorry, not Bills, Chiefs and Bengals again this year because of those two quarterbacks, and protecting Joe Burrow is going to be a big reason. And that signing definitely went nowhere. It was like the Bengals, I didn't even think they were involved. And here they were getting maybe one of the best players, not there in all of free agency.
Mm-hmm. He was my last guy I was going to throw out there too. So I'm glad you mentioned him. And I was actually talking to a Bengals fan today who mentioned a stat I double checked. I'm pretty sure is correct. Joe Burrow in his career is 12-1 when he's been sacked one or fewer times in a game. So first off, keep him upright. Second off, the fact that he's played 2.5+ seasons and has only had less than a season with one sack or less in a game is also ridiculous. We know he's getting beat up, but it's like, it's even worse maybe than we even thought. Keep him upright. Great move. I hope it works out for them, except I don't, because they don't need to win a Super Bowl, but yeah.
So I will throw out my 2 honorable mentions, and then I'll transition us into our least favorite moves. So first honorable mention, and it's not even because it's like a league-winning deal, but like we got to give some shout out, some love to our boy Craig Reynolds getting re-signed by the Detroit Lions. Craig Reynolds went to college with us. We did a documentary our senior year where we got to interview some of the football players on the team, and we interviewed Craig Reynolds for that documentary. And look, the dude is just he's a guy that you want to be around. He is a super nice guy. He is an awesome personality. We wish nothing but the best for Craig Reynolds. And I love going on the Detroit Lions Twitter and seeing the fans just tweet out like we love Craig and like coming up with gifs and videos and tweets for him. Like keep showing the guy love. Keep giving it your all, Craig. We'd love to see it. And then my second honorable mention is a move that probably wasn't even announced, and that's fine. By the Atlanta Falcons, it was a $2.5 million signing to a receiver that really broke out last year, and that's Mac Hollins. Signing with the Atlanta Falcons. Like, I know it sounds like a laughable move. I know that Mac Hollins has not had that great of a career, but the dude balled out last year. The dude was super good. And the Falcons are looking for pass catchers right now. So to get a guy like Mac Hollins on a 1 year, $2.5 million deal, super cheap, give him a chance to play like that again, even if it's just a bridge until you get somebody else, like, I think it's a solid move, a solid cap friendly move. And if he does break out and play like he did last year again, and he really did hit his stride later in his career, like awesome. Now you can keep him, re-sign him, give him a longer term deal. You got this guy super cheap. So shout out to Mac Hollins. Hopefully he does keep doing that. But one of my least favorite moves is on the same team. And it's gonna be it's kind of a little crazy here to even say this out loud, but Jesse Bates. I don't like the Jesse Bates to the Falcons signing. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying Jesse Bates isn't a good safety. I definitely think he is. I think he will be one of the best players on that defense. But you're paying a lot of money to a guy that, I don't feel like gets you closer to being a competitive team yet. I feel like they're still years away until they are a real strong contender. So I don't like the money that they're dishing out for a safety. Like I feel like if you're this bad of a team and you're going to be dishing out that kind of money, you need to be giving it to somebody that takes you to the next level faster. Whether it's a star quarterback, whether it's a bookend left tackle, whether it is a bigger player on defense than a safety. I feel like a safety can definitely improve you. I don't think they make or break your defense. So I don't love the move necessarily for cap reasons. I like the player. I think he'll help the team. I don't like it for cap reasons.
Yeah, I think that they had some cap space, so it's not the end of the world. They probably front loaded that a little bit, so they won't be in too much cap down the road. But I do think if we go back to just an earlier conversation, how they're in the NFC South, and we really don't know who is going to be there. Like they're adding pieces to maybe they're not going to compete for a Super Bowl, and maybe that's the word to be is like just competing to make the playoffs, but not going anywhere, which is what it feels like a lot of those teams are. It doesn't feel like this 2023 Super Bowl winner will be out of the South, but getting a guy like Jesse Bates, who's a leader, has some experience playing in Super Bowls, playing in big games, can be the back end of that defense. They also brought in like Taylor Heineke, compete with Desmond Ridder. Nothing special, but we're fans of Taylor Heineke on this one, even though I always want to call him Tyler. That's mainly because of your first name. They've just you mentioned Matt Collins. Like they've added enough pieces on the edge that they might be able to win the division, but is winning the division the ultimate goal? So that's a big question. So I do understand it from that point of like, how much does it really take you over the top compared to helping you win right now? But with I'm not going to say it's my most or my least favorite move. It's probably my biggest surprise was the Kansas City Chiefs and dishing out all that money for Jawan Taylor. Don't get me wrong, Jawan Taylor, solid player. But there's nothing like, and I mean this there's nothing truly special about him. He's good. He has some great games, has some bad games. I mean, he's a solid NFL starting player. But they gave him a ton of money to play left tackle when they had Orlando Brown, who they traded for, franchise tagged right there. Like, and the deals weren't that far off. So I see it as a step back. It's still Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like the Chiefs are going to be just fine. But that was probably my most surprising move of free agency.
I definitely could see that. I'm surprised they didn't retain Orlando Brown after all that. I'll go. I want to rip the Patriots just because I don't like the Patriots. But really, though, maybe this is the fantasy football me talking. But two of their signings really just kind of gave me a gut punch. First was James Robinson. Like, I've always been someone who's defended James Robinson. When he's actually gotten carries, he's been fantastic. He then went to the Jets and wasn't really used. Now he goes to New England, and he's either going to muddy the water so much for Ramondre Stevenson that both of them are going to be useless, or he's going to get no usage at all, and it's going to be like, well, why can't we just see carries from James Robinson for fantasy purposes? When it look at it like by the fact that they lost Damian Harris, good signing by Buffalo, I think, by the way, it makes sense from a team building standpoint. But the one that doesn't is Mike Gesicki. They lost a tight end. They still have Hunter Henry there. So, like, you're looking probably for a blocking tight end to replace Jonnu Smith. And instead, they go get a pass catcher who was not himself last year because Dolphins wanted to use him as a blocker. Not really his thing. So now you're going to see a situation of, like, is Hunter Henry going to have to go to more of a blocking role? Is Gesicki going to have to try to adapt to that again? Or are they going to go back to that 2 tight end system you used to see in New England? And can they even run that with Mac Jones?
I thought you were going to say Juju.
I agree. I mean,
that was
Juju's
another
definitely
head
an interesting
scratcher.
one.
When they let Jacoby
They
Myers
needed a
go.
wide receiver so bad because they lost all their mediocre ones that, like, Juju at least makes sense to go get a pass catcher, even though I don't think Juju is going to be as good in New England as he was in Kansas City. But, like, the Gesicki thing doesn't make sense because they already have a guy similar, and you saw him not thrive in a blocking role. And I would assume that's where he would fit in New England, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it is a 1-year deal and it is a cheap deal. So hopefully it's just I'm going to prove myself and then I'll break out next year. But it is going to be hard to prove it on a team with Mac Jones throwing the football and you are playing opposite side of Hunter Henry when really, even with no solid receivers outside of like Jacoby Myers, there really wasn't that many targets to Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith. Yes, he did go
they
to the
replaced
Raiders.
Aguilar and Myers with Juju, and I think that's it. I don't know of anyone else they have.
Because Jonnu really wasn't used.
Yeah.
I don't love the move.
Not really going to be used?
Unless they're planning on using Gesicki more like a wide receiver or Hunter Henry more like a wide receiver, which is possible. George, I actually want to throw out a least favorite move, and I'm surprised you didn't say it. And it's not because I think it was a bad move by the team, but it's because it's not what we wanted to see. Along the same lines, there was one person you texted me about that you were really upset that got re-signed, and that is Alexander Madison from the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
Just disappointed that he doesn't get to leave and really try for a starting role somewhere else. He is still sitting behind Dalvin Cook. The dude's always so good once Cook goes down. And it's a smart move by the Vikings. Don't get me wrong. But it's like disappointing because you want to see what he can do elsewhere. And we didn't get to see that. So that is a little bit of a disappointing move as well.
Could be a great move.
Thank you for mentioning that. That's a good one.
Great move, though, if the rumors about him possibly getting moved now in the draft, Dalvin Cook, that is, and Madison becomes RB1, could be some potential.
I'd be good with that.
Some potential there. So maybe George will be changing his tune. But, guys, we're definitely wrapping up on the time here. But before we go, we do have to get to Tyler's oddball fact of the day.
Yes, it is time for my oddball fact of the day. So I did not have a fact for you that's super free agency related, but I do have an off-season fact for you guys, and it is referring to the draft. And I know the draft is Cody's Christmas, so I thought this would be a good one. And this one is crazy to me because it changes the entire landscape of the NFL from this point on. And I did not know this one. So, up until 1990, college juniors were not draft eligible. Up until 1990, you had to have a minimum of 4 years of college to be eligible for the NFL draft. Now, like in today's day and age, like the first and second round is almost flooded with sophomore and juniors in college and the redshirt freshmen. Like it's flooded with them because they are younger. They, you get them while they're still at their peak before they hit those injuries, before they get that extra playing time. Like, can you imagine the NFL now if this was still a rule?
And actually, I feel like the draft would be a lot like it is this year, where there's a lot of older guys coming out. And it's mostly this year, it's because of the COVID year, and they gave an extra year of eligibility. And some of these guys that were kind of borderline were kind of working longer. And it's a very strange year when you look at it that way. And that'd be every single year. Like positions like running back would never get a second contract because they already don't want to give them a second contract because they're going to be 27 years old. Their shelf life is like 5-6 years in the NFL. Add a couple extra years of college into there, like that'd be ridiculous.
It's the NFL still has you still have to be out or 3 years removed from high school. So the redshirt sophomore is the lowest college class that can be eligible. So we're only taking away 1 year. But to Tyler's point, a lot of juniors and redshirt sophomores are those super high upside athletes. So it would definitely be an interesting one. And I don't know if this is allowed, so I'm going to ask Tyler.
Sure.
Can I give a fact? I saw one on Twitter that I felt like I didn't want to text you to tell you to do this fact, but I think this is another mind-blowing about when it comes to age.
Dude, I am completely down for another mind-blowing fact. Hit me.
Brandon Cooks is only 1 year older than Calvin Ridley.
Interesting.
Yep.
I feel like Brandon Cooks has been around forever and has been traded 87 times. So it feels like he's got to be 36 by now, right? But like
he's 29.
And Calvin Ridley
28.
seems like he'd be so young because, we haven't seen him in 2 years. So, you still think of him only playing in the league for a couple years. So he has to be super young. So like, I see why we get to the point where it seems weird, but that's definitely strange.
And I'm pretty sure with the trade, Brandon Cooks tied the record for most trades in a single career, and he's 29. So let's go for one more in a few years.
I hope so.
Let's go for one more. I just want to see him break the record. And it's amazing to me that he has gotten this far because he's been an above average wide receiver everywhere he's gone. He was the one bright spot on the Texans for so long. And like no one wants to commit, which is kind of depressing for him. But props to him for going so many places and being successful at every single one of them.
I'm excited for him. I think he's going to have a much better season now. I think it's going to be a lot better for him to be on a team that's actually competitive. Like, to be honest with you, like you want to perform at your best at all times. I mean, you are performing to, get your next contract, to get paid. Like you obviously want to win. Nobody wants to lose. But how hard would you play as a player if you're on a team like the Texans where from day one you got no shot? Like how can you give your all for a team that's just utter garbage at every aspect of football and you're one of the lone bright spots? Like it has to be a deflating feeling. Like it hopefully this re-energizes his career and we see a big step up from Brandon Cooks now that he got traded too.
I want to see Brandon Cooks across from prime Will Fuller Brandon Cooks. That's what I want to see.
Oh,
Will Fuller.
What could have been for the Texans? What could have been?
All right, guys.
I think that'll wrap us up. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us here on an episode of the Couch GMs podcast. For Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Boom.
Nice.
Choo-choo.